So we're moving on to chapter 3. It looks like I need to upload the next version, but the book hasn't materially changed since the last version too much. I'll get the new PowerPoints up. All right, so we've already been doing this stuff. Create a form in the Visual Studio IDE, add a button to the form, add labels and text boxes to the form, name your forms and controls, correct errors, and decide which interface to use. All right. So the interface is the environment that the user sees, a console interface or a Windows-based interface. Forms are the rectangular graphical user interface objects that the user sees, pops up. So to create a form, what we're going to do is select New Project after starting Visual Studio, then choose Windows Form Application. Well, we've been using WPF. WPF is what Microsoft wants us to use. They created Windows Form Application in the past decade, and then for .NET, we're supposed to be using WPF. Why don't we look at this and decide which we're going to do? So we create a Windows Form Application. The main menu lies horizontally across the top. The Toolbox tab provides a list of controls. We've seen the toolbox. The Form Designer appears in the center of the screen. And the Solution Explorer allows viewing and management of project files and settings. So the Properties window, you configure properties and events for the controls in your user interface. And I didn't really hammer in on it, but we've already done an event. When you click the button, that triggers an event. And the error list displays messages. So in the Properties window, you can change the appearance, size, and color of the window. The form class contains about 1,000 properties. Window property names appear in alphabetical order, except for name, inside the groups. So, creating a form in the IDE. The IDE itself, the form itself has some properties in it. It's got an accept button, the background color, the cancel button, the for color, the name, the size, the text, and the visible. Now I may regret what I'm about to do, but I'm going to create a WPF instead and see how many of these properties also exist for that. So I'm making a new document. Catch up if you need to. So it looks like we're on E. We said Chapter 2 finished. We really are done with Chapter 2. I'm going to change that to Chapter 3 begin. So, make your new project. Let's go ahead and do a WPF form just because I would prefer y'all to learn the newest one. There's nothing wrong with redoing their little tutorial using Windows Forms. So Visual C#, WPF application. I'm going to call mine Lecture E followed by my initials. So here's our main window, what they're calling a form. If we right-click it, well, don't even right-click it, just click on the name of the window and come over here. We should see, I'm clicking on the background now, the white part, we should see some properties associated with it. Tooltip would be something that text would appear as we moused over it. Layout, we can see some width and some height. If we want a smaller form, we can change that. Horizontal alignment versus vertical alignment, I don't know about that. If we want margins to our form, we can do that. What's under miscellaneous? The visual focus style. Doesn't look like we have a lot of choices there. going to go back up to the top now. The brush, the background and the opacity, the appearance, the opacity, the common. Okay, I'm not seeing a lot about what the chapter is telling us to see. So, I guess I'm going to give in and do what they want us to do. I'm going to close this project, close this solution. I'm going to do another File, New Project, and I'm going to go ahead and give in, make it a Windows Form application. Lecture E2, just because it's the second one, JGT. You do not have to call it JGT, of course, those are not your initials. All right, so now we have a form. And here's the properties for it. We can sort the properties by alphabetical or by categories. If we do categories, we scroll up. We see some accessibility properties, some appearance properties. Say we want to change the background color. Instead of light gray, maybe I want the background colors to be something different. We seem to have a limited palette, but if we choose web, we can choose different colors. Or if we choose custom, we can choose different colors still. I want a blue background. All right, now I'm excited. If we wanted to, we could make our background a specific image, and then that could be an image that we would change, that we could change by a click of a button or something like that. So then our font, what font do we want things to be displayed in native? I'm going to leave that alone. The text, well, right now it's just called Form 1. I'm going to change the text of it to something else. I think this is called content in WPF. I love that we're doing two different things, but okay, we're flexible. I'm going to call this my application. And so that appears up here. Behavior, allow drag and drop. Do we want to let the user drag stuff onto this window, like if it was a file uploading application? Nah, I'm going to leave that false. Do we have a context menu? No, we don't, not at this time. I'm beginning to think that this is more flexible than WPF. Or if not, it sure seems like there are a lot of properties. And I'm going to go back to our lecture now, or PowerPoint. Alrighty, we can set the name of it, we can set the size of it, we can see the text. Now these are common for all controls, not just that main form. And get or set a value indicating whether the control is visible. You can do that in WPF as well. Really wish we'd stuck with the WPF. So the program.cs file contains the automatically generated main. So if we go back over here, you bring up your Solution Explorer if you don't see it. And then you come over here and you double click on program.cs, you'll see our program, including our main method. Here's our main method. It does some voodoo in order to get running. Enable visual styles, set compatible text rendering to default, and then .run followed by new form. That's the name of our form. Maybe that's a lame name for a form. We see something called form over here. Maybe we could right click and change its name. Or not right click. Yep, there's its, I'm going to right click. Yeah, look, it's trying to let me type and rename it right there. Right click, rename. I'm going to call this Lecture E form, just for grins. You're renaming a file. Would you also like to perform a rename in this project of all references? Absolutely. I've renamed the file. I better rename all the references to it. Right now we only have one reference to it, but could be more. All right, and now you see when this application loads, when it invokes main, what it's going to do is it's going to create a new lecture form and then call .run. Now I don't think I feel like monkeying with main at the moment too much, but maybe we ought to try something just because messing things up is fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called form is equal to new lecture E form, like that. And then where it says application, okay, it doesn't know, I didn't give it a name. Form, my form, is equal to new, I better zoom in, you guys in the video can't see this. That's what I just added, that line there. Form, and then variable name, my form, equals new lecture E form, just because I named my form that. If you didn't, it would be called form 1. And then when we run it, we're going to do application run, and I'm going to delete all this stuff inside the parentheses and just say run my form. Hope that makes it a little clearer what it's doing. It creates a form and then it runs it. So inside that form, there should be a CS file. Lecture E form.cs. I'm going to just double click on that and see what I see. Yeah, I see some stuff, but I'm not going to make any changes to it. What partial class means. Yeah, let's go Google it so I'll give you the exact definition. Partial class C#. So every C# class exists in a separate physical file. But C# provides the ability to have a single class that spans multiple .cs files. So unlike Java, where you have to put everything that's in a class inside that one .java file, you can make a class span several different .java files. Tutorialsteacher.com. I'm going to need to go and look that back up, see if I think those are good tutorials. The program ought to run. I haven't even tested it yet, but I'm going to try it. Build, rebuild solution. But it's not going to display anything. Just my blue window, because I changed its background color. So when we open the IDE, the left border displays a toolbox tab. We can drag controls, such as a button on it. We can locate the control by dragging it. We can delete it. So here's some controls here. This chapter uses label, button, and text box. In this figure, text box is hidden until you scroll down, just because their screen's a different size than ours. So a button, you know what a button is. It's a clickable object that allows a user to interact with a GUI program. By default, the first button dragged onto the form is named button 1, but we could change the name. And then when you click on a control, the properties window shows its properties. I'm going to come back to my designer, and I'm going to go to the toolbox. I said I'm going to go to the toolbox. Alrighty. View toolbox. Here we go. Windows Forms. Button. Maybe we ought to call it something else. Let's go and look at the forms that are allowed, the properties that are allowed for it. Yeah, we could store images in it. We can make the text go left to right. Here's its text. How do we want the text aligned? Well, I like it being in the middle and the center. Behavior, do we want to let people drag and drop stuff onto that? Is it enabled or not? If we change this enabled thing to false, then when we run the app, when we rebuild it and run it, that button's going to be grayed out. We can't click on it. Now we can't really tell that it's grayed out unless we have something else on the screen to compare it to. So I'm just going to drag out another button for now. We'll run it. And we'll see that we have two buttons, and it's pretty obvious that one of them's grayed out and one's not. So you can disable a control. For example, you might not want to enable the submit form until after they type in their entire address, right? We don't want to just them typing in a name to put a mailing label in and click, print. We want them to enter the whole thing, so the button could be grayed out until they enter the whole thing. it suggests renaming the button. We can do that. How do we do that? Right-click Properties. Is that how we rename it? That's how we renamed it for WPF. Well, here it is, down in Design. The name of it, we can give it a different variable name. I haven't really gotten an idea of what we're going to call it, so I'm going to leave it alone. Go and look at the PowerPoint. But in general, when you drop your controls on there, you ought to give them better names than just button 1 and text 1 and stuff like that. Because when you're editing the code, it'll make a lot more sense when you look, you know, instead of just calling button 1.disable, you could put the, you know, print button.disable. Feel free to look at the PowerPoint because I'm not letting you really look at them too long, and on the YouTube video they'll be too tiny to see anyways. Alright, so using the toolbox to add a button to a form, set or get the background color for the control, enable it or disable it, set the font or get the font, for color, the name, the size, the text, whether it's visible or not. Maybe we can make a button that disappears as soon as it's clicked. That'd be kind of moronic, but let's give that a try. So I'm going to re-enable button 1. So where it says enabled false under the behavior, so behavior enabled, I'm going to change this to true. I apologize for the tiny text. Okay, it is enabled, and if I double click it, it'll create a method for it. I really want to give it a better name than just button 1. So I'm going to call this now I don't want to make it too long. Disappearing button. But that doesn't change its text. Its text is in a different field. If I come up here and I do sort by alphabetical, I can scroll down and I can find the text. I don't want it to say button 1. I want it to say go away. Just because our button is going to disappear when we click on it, if all goes well. Here's our font. If I click font, I ought to be able to change the size of the font to something else, like maybe 12-point font, just to make it bigger. So I went down to font. I'm still on the button. I changed its size to 12. Now it says go away in larger print. All right, what happens when I double click on it? It creates a form. Not a form, it creates a method, an event inside the form. And what do I mean by an event? I'm going to go back to my designer. I'm going to click on this, and you see the little lightning bolt? That stands for events. Right now, this button has only one event. When it is clicked, it calls disappearing button _ click. This one, if I click on it, it doesn't do anything. We haven't made a method for that yet. But we do have a method for this one, which the designer created when we double clicked on it. Alright, if yours looked different than mine when you loaded it up, it may have been set for categorized events, right? And so it looks considerably different. It's not alphabetized. And if you choose alphabetical events, but it's scrolled all the way up, then our click event is like halfway down the page. But when I went to the events, it was already scrolled up so that the event click was like that, right? Okay, let's see if we can figure out the name of our button. The name of our button was something like disappearing button. So I'm going to go back to my code. I'm just going to double click on the button. And was it called disappearing button? Yes, it was, right there. So I started typing disappearing button, but then IntelliSense popped up the name of all the controls in there. And so I'm going to click that. So disappearing button dot visible equals false. And that didn't work. Yep, that worked. Okay. So as soon as they click it, we're going to change the visible property from, it was true because it's visible, but now it won't be. If you want to get a list of all your controls without using IntelliSense, you might be able to do this. This dot disappearing, right, like that. So if you use this dot, it'll pop up a list of all the controls. Right now we only have one, and there's a whole bunch of methods. So usually I name them with the name of the button first, following a word, so that it's easy to find them in the pop-up list of offerings. All right, I ought to be able to run it now. Rebuild solution. Click Start. When I click Go Away, the button disappears because it sets .visible equal to false. Whatever you named your button has to be there. If you don't remember what you named it, go back to your designer. I seem to have two. Okay, I'm going to close one of my little windows. Go back to your designer, click on Go Away, go to the properties, click on the properties button rather than the events button. You see you have two choices here. And set it for alphabetical, and you can scroll down until you see name. Well, that didn't work. So scroll up to the top, and there's the name of it, disappearing button. So you could just copy that and paste it if you needed to, right? Highlight all that, copy it, come back to your code. And then paste it into my code so I could do something with it. Changes are not allowed while program is running, okay? Anyways, you see what I mean. I got the name of the button by copying and pasting it from properties, and I could use it in here. So if this is an error for you, it's probably because you didn't rename the name of the button at the point that I did. So you can go back to the lecture form. You can click on the name here, on the button here, choose Properties, choose Alphabetical, so now these two little buttons are lit up, at least on my screen. Scroll up to the top and you'll see the name. And if it says Button 1, it's just because you didn't rename it, and you could give it any name you wanted to. I'm going to give it a different name. Button Hide, right? I'm just going to give it a different name. And when I hit enter, it renames the reference to it inside my code. So it's okay to wait until later, right? It used to say disappearing button, now it says button_hide. However, the method name has not changed. I might want to change that to match the name of the button itself. Let's see if I can just do that by right-clicking and doing rename. Well, right-click, refactor, rename will do it. And it used to be called disappearing button. I'm going to call it button_hide_click. If you can't see that, that's what I wrote, button_hide. And then it's asking me, preview all your changes. Sure, why not? Apply it. So it changed the name of that method, but if I go and look at the events for that control, come over here, click on that, come over here, click on events, it changed the name of it. We probably could have also changed it right there, I'm not sure. I'm going to type in not_sure, like that. And it created a new method. That's not what I want. I don't want this thing called not sure. So instead, I'm going to go back to the designer. Where's my designer? I'm going to find its events again. Events stored it alphabetically. And I don't want it to be calling the not sure method. I'm going to click the little pull down and choose button hide click, because that's the method that I do like it running. All right. I hope I haven't confused you too much. You're supposed to rename your buttons, so that's what I've been trying to illustrate. we could change the text of the button so that when they clicked on it, it said something else. Okay, so adding functionality to a button on a form. After dragging it on there, double-click it to create a method that executes when the user clicks the button. You can view the designer by selecting View and then Design from the menu bar. So that's one way of getting back to the designer when you're looking at your code. View or Designer gets us back there more easily than probably what I was showing before. So we will see many generated statements, some confusing, most of which we can ignore, and we're going to write code between the curly braces of the button one click method, except I renamed it. If you change the name, which is what we've done, if you change the name property of button 1, the click method should have the same name, unless you've generated the click method after you change the name of it. And you can write anything you want inside the click method. So, events. Events are generated to cause the program to perform a task. And there's a lot more than just click. The click event is what occurs when the user clicks on the object like a button. Labels. Labels are controls that we can use to display text to communicate with an application's user. So we can drag a label onto a form, just like a button, and we can change its text property. We may need to resize the label. Okay, so over here, in my all Windows forms, I'm going to find label, scroll down here, drag the label out. What if I don't want it to say label? And I double clicked on it. That's a common mistake. You drag something out, like a text field or whatever, and then you double click on it thinking it's going to do something cool. And yeah, it did something cool. It created a click method for it. Now, in general, we can ignore that. But what if you want to delete it? And you might want to follow along. Go ahead and drag your label out and then double click on it to make the same mistake I did. It creates this bad method. So I'm going to go back to the designer. I'm going to choose my label again. I'm going to go to Events. And see here, that's where it calls that handler for it. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to backspace over it. Now, there's no click method associated with that label. However, that is still out in the code. No, it's not. Yay, it deleted that method. I'm not sure that I like that. Right? Maybe I put a whole bunch of effort in that method and I just wanted to disable it. There's probably something I can do about that. I'm not going to worry about it right now. But we have a label here. I haven't given it a good name. Right now it's just called label 1. But I'm going to make the button do something interesting when it's clicked, my go away button. So I'm going to double click back on go away to enter my code. And that label 1 dot no, I'm not going to change its visibility. How about label 1 dot text equals button go bye bye. End quote, semicolon. So when we run it and then click that go away button, it changes to button go bye bye. Apparently this is being written by a 3-year-old. We should redo this assignment as a WPF just because that's what I've been doing in all the other ones. So it's not going to be called dot visible. Maybe. Let's blaze on. So what they've done is they made a label that says enter a number. They're writing a little application like we did in our prior applications, right, where you type in a number. So I can do that. Let's do that. No, I'm not trying to launch Java. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here, go to my designer. Let's drag a new label out and rename its text entering number. So here's my label, called label 2. That's boring. I'm going to drag this labeled 1 up to go away. I'm going to resize this. All right, label 2 is going to say enter a number. And again, I double clicked on it, which is a mistake. It creates a method for it that I don't want. My mistake. I'm going to go back to the lecture. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to the events, sort it alphabetically. And where it says click, I'm going to choose nothing. Except I don't have label 2 highlighted, so it's not finding it. Okay. Label 2, events, alphabetical, and there's my click method for it. I want to delete all that so that there's no associated method for it. And maybe I can train myself to stop double clicking on everything. The only things you want to automatically generate a method for are the buttons at this point. All right. But I do need to change this text. So I'm going to click on label 2. It'd be really neat if I could just choose right click and do edit text. If you've used the NetBeans Java Forms editor, then it allows that. Unfortunately, this one does not, so we're going to go back to properties, not events. So I've selected label 2, I'm choosing properties, and I'm going to scroll up and down until I see text. Now label 2 is boring, so I'm going to make it say enter a number. That font is too tiny, so I'm going to see if I can find where the font is chosen. Right there, font, 8.25 points. I'm going to change that. I'm going to double click in the little box of the 3 dots and make it a nice big label, 12 points at least. So text boxes are where the user types in stuff. If the user is supposed to enter data in a text box, you frequently want to start with its text property entry, empty. So let's drag a text box out there, and let's just wipe out all the text so that it'll start off empty. Now, it's a text. The text property returns a string. And if the user is supposed to try to enter a number, we have to convert it. Use try parse. So I'm going to grab out a text box from my all Windows Forms text box. I'm going to drag that out, put it underneath enter a number. I think I'm going to make that nice big font as well, so I'm going to find where it says font. Expand the features so that I can find the size. I'm going to change the size to 12. Or I could have used the little pop-up thing that I did last time, which is find a little dot, dot, dot button here. Click that, and I can change its font. I should give it a better name than just text box 1, but I don't think that they walk us through changing its name, so I'm going to leave that alone. So now it says type a number, and it's got a text box there. Very similar to what we've done. These are the world's worst PowerPoints because when you zoom in on the image it looks lousy, but that's okay. So the form here is meant to have the user enter 2 numbers, and then when they click, the 2 numbers will be, the sum of them will be displayed in label 3. Kind of like our multiply application. And we must perform the code to do the addition, which will go into the button. Maybe I should just delete all that silly stuff that we've added so that we can make it look like this. Why not? I mean, after all that work that we did on the go away, I'm really kind of disappointed to make that go away. Delete that stuff. Even though we were just clowning around. I'm going to go ahead and put that up there. I'm going to drag button over here, button 2 over there. And where it says enter a number, I'm going to put the text field there. And rather than drag those controls out again, I'm going to see if I can copy and paste them. So using shift click, or not, I'm going to click on enter a number, use shift click to select that one, and I'm going to choose copy, and then I'm going to click on the background of the form and choose paste, and now I have 2 controls there. They suggested something else, enter a second number, something like that. So I'm going to click on that one, enter a number, find his text, And where it says enter a number, it's going to say enter a second number. And what they want us to do is to have one more control, which is going to display the result. Yeah, they just want another label there. So let's drag out one more label. Grab, drag, and they put their button under there. And I think they changed the name of it to add, something like that. Let's go take a peek. You must, okay, yeah, click to add. All right, we can do that. I'm going to change the text of it to click to add. It's too tiny, so I'm going to change its font. Choose the font, click the button, dot, 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 make it a nice big text. Stretch it out a little bit. And then label 4. What was the font size of these? I forget. 12 point, okay. On theirs it says label 3. We probably have a label 3 somewhere else. Yep, we already have a label 3. I'm just going to have to remember that the reason I have a label 4 is because I already had a label 1, right? In their example, that was label 1, that was label 2, and this is label 3, but in my example, that's label 1, label 2, label 3, and label 4. And again, if I gave these better names, I wouldn't have to keep track of those silly numbers. But while I'm here, I am going to make him 12 points, just like I did all the others. 12 points in size. All right. Probably ought to blank it out because we don't want it to just say label 4, but let's just follow the PowerPoint for now before I get too crazy. Okay, so we must do the code that does the addition. We're going to go back to our click method. I don't think we have a click method for this click to add button. Well, we're going to make one. So I'm going to come back here, double click on click to add. Now we have a new method. Button 2 underscore click, and again, that's a really lame button, lame name. So I'm going to change the name of that. I'm going to highlight all that. Well, see, here I go doing stuff that the book's not doing, but I really want y'all to know how to do this stuff. So I'm going to highlight all that button 2 underscore click stuff, choose refactor, rename, and call it add underscore button underscore click, something like that. It asks some questions. Yes, I want to rename everything. Click apply. All right, that's a better name. But what did we want this button to do? We wanted it to pull out the text from our 2 fields and then add them up. So we're going to have to convert them. I'm going to scroll to see how they do it, and then we'll probably do it our own way. Yeah, see, they want us to use convert to int. And we're not going to use that. We're going to use try parse, and then they want us to create the dot text by using addition, concatenation. Well, that'd work. I guess we could do what they want to do. I really would rather use try parse though, but I'm going to follow their example exactly. Well, too late for that, huh? So they called them int num1, int num2, and int sum. Why restrict them to using integers? We would have to change this, though, from int to double. I can't help it. We're going to do it the way I want to do. Okay, so double D1, double D2, double result. I like declaring my variables first sometimes. And then we're going to need some text. Nah, we probably don't need to do that. Let's just do D1 is equal to double dot, wait, we're going to need a Boolean variable to hold its result. See, I'm making it too complicated. I really want you all to know this. Bool space BOK1 is equal to double dot try parse parentheses. We're going to get the text of the first text field. What was it called? I better go and double check it. This text field is called, if I check his name, this text field was called text box 1. All right. So go back to my code. Bool BOK1 is equal to double dot try parse text box 1 dot text, because we have to get the text out of it, comma, I'm going to the next line, you don't have to, out, followed by the variable name that we want to store it in. And I put a semicolon inside the parentheses instead of outside of it. And then I need to do the same thing for bool BOK2. I might just copy and paste that stuff, right? That was a lot of typing. If I do that, I'm going to have to change all these 1s to a 2s. And if you change the names of the text boxes, you better fix that. Okay. So this one's going to say bool BOK2 is equal to double dot try parse text box 2 out D2. Then we're going to add them and store the result into this result variable. I'm getting an error there because I forgot the parentheses. So what we're going to do now is, since we have the results of these try parses, we're going to make sure everything's okay. If BOK1 equals false, and you probably know that there's another way of doing this, and then 2 vertical bars, shift backslash above the enter key, or BOK2 equals false, then we're going to create, we're going to say, now mine is called label 4. Yours may be called label 3 if you're following the instructions in a PowerPoint exactly. Just realize that if you put the silly stuff that I did here, like that hide me button, then yours may be called label 4. You know how to check its name. You know, I'm going to come back over here and make it say label 4, mine's 4.text. Yours maybe 3.text, label 3.text equals invalid input. Else, they gave us good input. So else, curly brace, I'm going to go and sneak a peek at their code. I think I know how to do it. Result equals D1 plus D2. And then let's say label 4 dot text, and remember here maybe label 3, equals sum colon space end quote plus result. This is very similar to your multiplication one. If you feel like it, you could do your multiplication one as a Windows Form application rather than a WPF, because you have this example now. It's a little bit fresher in your brain if you haven't already done it. I'm going to see if it works. Start, enter a number. I'm going to type in bad data first, make sure that's handled correctly. Invalid input. Excellent. I'm going to click go away. Go away. All right. Now I'm going to type in good numbers. And since I made these doubles rather than ints, as the book suggested, I can type in. Right. Can I use exponents? 4e to the 11? Yeah, sure can. What do you know? Cool. All right, we are done with that PowerPoint. Let me bring the code back up so you can see it all. Remember, you may need to change the names of your text boxes. I mean, you know, text box 1, text box 2, and labels if. I think I'm going to modify it so this oops, code not modifiable while editing. I mean, what running. Okay. I'm just moving this stuff back up to the same line so I can get all the code on one screen, I hope. Yeah, I think so. So this is all inside the add button underscore click, or whatever, button 1 underscore click, if that's what you named it. And here's our code. So pause that, make sure that yours matches, except you may have renamed your controls, in which case you'll use those names. All right, so we are done with that. I hope that wasn't too different from the PowerPoint. If it was and you're frustrated, just step through the PowerPoint and follow the same steps along there, because they explain it much more concisely. I hope I provide some added value.
Welcome to the videos.
All right, so we tested. The period during which you design a program is called design time. When you execute the program, it's called runtime. So focus defines which control is active. A button that has focus has a line around it. A text box that has focus has a cursor inside it. The control can be given focus. You can click on the control or you can hit the tab. So like if I run it, I can tab around. And these things may be in the wrong order, right? It could be that as I tab them, it goes to the second one, and then the first one, and then a button, and anyways. So that can be an annoyance to fix. So the user can press the tab key, which will set the focus on the next control as defined by the tab order. So the tab order is represented by a sequential number known as the tab index. Tab indexes begin with 0. The default tab order is determined by the order in which the controls are added to the form. And unless specified, the first control will have tab index 0. We can use the same format strings to format the strings in the GUI applications. You can use string.format, sure. Every control that contains a text has a font property. Most fonts are proportional fonts, meaning that different letters have different widths. A W is wider than a lowercase I. However, there are some fonts like Courier where every single one of them is the same. So that's known as a monospace font, also known as a fixed pitch font. Courier is an example of a monospaced font. So, good idea. Provide a reasonable name property values for every control you put on the form. Just rename the controls. Conventionally, do your control names with a lowercase letter and then use camel case. You saw me using underscores. Either one works. And then start form names with an uppercase letter and use Pascal casing, which just means start with an uppercase and still don't use underscores. To rename a control after you've generated the control, use the code refactoring feature. Can I do that? Can I come up here, select a label, right-click it, and do refactor? I didn't think so. Refactor works from inside the code editing here. Right. If I really don't like this being called text box 1, I could highlight text box 1, right-click, refactor, rename, and if I wanted to give it a better name, I don't know what, input field 1, I could do that. Click OK, and now everywhere that occurs, even out in the designer form, in the form designer, it has been changed. Or I could undo that. All right. Control Z to undo it. Correcting errors. As in console-based programs, you often generate syntax errors. When you build it, you'll see build failed in the lower left corner of the IDE and an error dialog box. Always click no in would you like to continue and run the last successful build. So let's say that I just, had an extra T here and I tried to build it. Hopefully I would see the error messages. Here's the error list. Now it's not showing me the exact thing that the PowerPoint promised, but I do see the error list, which I could extend up and double click on it and read it, right? Does not contain a definition for text. So when I double clicked on it, I would see that underlined and I might be able to spot what was wrong, right? Hopefully. Double clicking on the error message in the error list will take you to the location in the code where the error was found. Deleting an unwanted event handling method. It's easy to inadvertently double click a control and create an event handling button you don't want. And I did that several times. For example, if I was in a lecture forum and I accidentally double clicked on this enter a number thing, I don't want them to be able to double click on a label. I mean, unless we're making, Easter eggs in a game and they have to click all over the place to find, anyways. So I want to get rid of this method. So you can't just delete the method, because behind the scenes other code will have been created that refers to the method. So don't do this. Don't just highlight all that stuff and hit backspace. Okay, it let me do it, but it's warning me not to do it, and that's my experience as well. Some editors won't even let you delete methods in that fashion. So, whoopsie. Instead, go to the Properties window of the control, choose Events, and then select the button you want to eliminate and delete the method name. Okay, so I have a bad event there. I go back to my form designer. I click the control with the bad event. I find my Properties panel. I view the events. Sort in alphabetical order if you can't find click. And where it says label, I just want to back that. I want to get rid of all that stuff. So I'm going to delete it. Now that method is gone from my code, and there's no connection between the two. So if I go back over here, yep, method's gone. Deciding which interface to use. We've learned how to make console applications. We've learned how to make GUI applications. Both types contain basic building blocks. GUI applications look, quote, snazzier and are easy to use. They take longer to develop. We could have written this little add to things console as a console app like in 5 minutes, right? Console applications are simpler. They may be better when learning new logical constructs, right? So sometimes we'll create a console app just because it's, quick and easy. Open that up and then we can demonstrate switch statements or, whatever we need to do. So our summary. Forms are GUI objects, graphical user interface objects, that provide an interface for collecting, displaying, and delivering information. The toolbox displays a list of available controls. The list includes button, checkbox, and label. Labels are controls that allow you to display text. Text boxes let you type stuff into them. You can have other things like checkboxes. We didn't even demonstrate a text box, so a checkbox, so I'm not sure why they listed it there, but it's certainly true. If you give good name property values, your code is easier to understand. If you build or run a program that contains a syntax error, you should see the error list and build failed. And then both console and GUI applications can contain variables and constants, decisions, loops, arrays, and calls to other methods. All right. And look snazzier, contain controls that a user can manipulate with a mouse and take longer to develop. Okay. So what do you know? We did chapter 3 in an hour. So I'm pretty pumped about that. One thing to note is that if all the examples in the book are shown in Windows Forms, then it's okay to make Windows Forms applications on your own. You don't have to do WPF just because that's what I'm demonstrating it. I'm demonstrating WPF because I believe that that's the one that's most commonly used out in the world. And we could Google it and see if that's the case. His book is revisions of revisions of revisions of revisions of ones that were written like in the early 2000s, and so they're showing us the earlier, technology, and that's okay. Because the idea is very similar, right? We've done the WPFs, we dragged things out on the screen, we double-clicked on the button, right? And we added some code. All that's very similar, right? Individual things may have changed a little bit, but it's all very similar, and you probably can do both. So just pick which one you like. I probably will continue to demonstrate WPFs in my lectures. As you work through the chapters, if you feel like doing Windows forms for the practice, feel free. All right, I hope this has been amazingly fun. So let's go and create a Dropbox.